In this video, I'm excited to share with all of you the best chess game that Judit Polgar ever played. She was the #1 ranked female player in the world between 1989 and 2014 when she retired from competitive chess, and she peaked at #8 on the overall rankings. In 1991, she became the youngest grandmaster ever at the time at the age of 15, beating Bobby Fischer's record. So let's take a look at this game where she had the black pieces against Alexey Shirov, at the time a very, very fearsome opponent who was competing on the candidate circuit. This was a game played in Buenos Aires in Argentina in 1994. Judit was an attacking player, and well, I don't think we need any further introduction. E4, C5, knight F3, E6. An open Sicilian from Alexey is going to go for D4. And Judit plays E6, the point of which is to invite a Taimanov Sicilian, a Scheveningen Sicilian, rather than a Najdorf or a Dragon. So that's exactly what we get, knight C6, knight C3, and here black has a choice. Black can play queen C7, black can play knight F6, which is known as the two-knight Sicilian, which ultimately can then potentially become a classical, etc., etc. There's different iterations. So D6, this is like a Scheveningen structure, and basically just avoiding kind of the main line, which is queen to c7. Alexey plays g4, which is non-standard. It's g4 in these kinds of positions is known as the Keres attack, named after Paul Keres, but normally white plays bishop e3, f3, long castle, left through queen d2, and so on. But Alexey felt like spicing it up a little bit. And we get a6 here, which is also very standard. Now we get bishop e3. And now, rather than playing into knight f6, g5, which is kind of the whole point of putting the g-pawn so far, is that you kind of, throw in this very early, aggressive intention, Polgar plays knight e7. And this is already kind of very weird for the Sicilian, like the knight on e7. It's in certain structures that this knight belongs here, but here it's reinforcing this. And actually, this knight is fighting for the dark squares. You say, well, Levy, what the hell are you talking about, fighting for the dark squares? Well, when you go g4, you've got to remember that the pawn fights on these squares, not on these squares. Every time you move a pawn forward, the squares on the sides are no longer potentially controlled, at least by that pawn. If you have reinforcement somehow, maybe. But every time you move a pawn, you take control of squares, but you weaken certain squares as well. And so we see knight b3. We see a retreat here from Shirov, getting his knight out of the center of the board. This is very common also for the Sicilian to kill the tension a little bit. Now b5 and f4. So both players taking space on their respective sides. And this is really the Sicilian in its purest essence. It's imbalance on two sides. Bishop b7 and queen f3. Now again, like I said, normally we get some queen d2 and long castle this way. This time Shirov was feeling a little bit, spicy and wanted to play queen f3. This is not theoretical. This wasn't some sort of, brilliant innovation. It was just him kind of creating a new idea, and potentially wants to play f5, focus on that side of the board. Now, here, our fabled protagonist with the black pieces uncorks one of the most brilliant combinations I think I've ever seen, which is why I featured it. Now, Polgar has defeated Kasparov in her career. But even that game, despite it being such a spectacle of an opponent, doesn't take precedence over this one. So, first things first. Pawn to g5. Ha! Looks like a mouse slip, actually. Looks like you wanted to go here and here. No, g5 is a brilliant move. The point of g5 is that you literally just give this pawn away for the control of the dark squares in the center of the board. White takes and you play knight e5. Now, if white didn't take, for example, if white just played f5, yes, it looks good, but you still get knight e5. And here, you realize that this is the only thing guarding this, so you play b4, and white's position falls apart very quickly. There is one small detail I wanted to share with you. On knight a4, you actually cannot take on e4, because if you would, then despite me seemingly being in trouble, I would play bishop to b6. I'm now attacking your queen, and my queen attacks your bishop, and actually you're losing material. So here you have to throw in what's called an in-between move. To go bishop c6, hitting the knight. The knight only has one safe move, and now you do that. And now the bishop can't go here. The rook is hanging, but so is this. Knight f3 check is coming, and it's very bad news. So pawn to f5 is something Shirov cannot play. At the same time, what he should have done is castle long, is just get castled quickly. And now one thing that can happen is that, you would have taken on f4, bishop f4, and something like knight g6. And now the fight is for all of this dark squared real estate. The game could have gotten crazy here with something like knight c5. Hitting the bishop and you can't take because of the pin. One sample variation is something like this, where I don't even know what's going on. Two knights are standing here. This knight's gonna try to, scamper out and get out and everything, but in the game, Shirov just kind of tried to call the bluff. He said, well, f takes g5. Well, this is part 2 of the combination. You throw the jab. Now it's time to come over the top with the hook. Knight e5. All right, queen is hit. Where's the queen gonna go? It goes to g2 because it wants to keep everything protected. Now Polgar hits on the other side of the board, right? It's like, throwing the kick maybe. I don't think she was physically assaulting Shirov at the board. He's also kind of a big guy. I don't really think that was happening. But, fighting on all sides. Knight back to e2. There's no point to come here because if the knight comes there, it has no way back. Well, now what? I mean, you can't take anything, right? I mean, d5 is like, it's an aggressive move, but are you really going to attack the center with the king there? And, like, white can just castle? Well, so then what is Judit going to do here? Oh, yeah, she's a genius. h5. What? That move is fascinating. So first things first, in the game, Shirov just took again to, call the bluff. Now, if en passant would have happened, this is fascinating. You would think that it's to take back, right? I mean, I've been talking about fighting in the dark. No, it's to play the last pawn in front of the king forward with the pin here. And so, for example, if pawn takes, you actually take with the knight. And now the knight is attacking the bishop. The knight cannot be taken. Queen h4 becomes possible. When the knight comes, the knight can also go to h4, hitting the queen and then jump into f3. It's bad news. The point is to sack all your pawns and then play f5. Just insane. So Shirov takes on h5. Now you cannot play f5 here because of en passant. Again, it's this rule, this nasty little rule. So here, she does this the next best thing. She doesn't take back. She plays knight f5. And again, you can't take because of the pin. I mean, this game is purely genius. I mean, there is no other way I can describe it. Just no other way. Oops, sorry. That wasn't genius. That was a misclick. At this point, what Shirov apparently should have done is just say, look, I just gotta sacrifice my queen. In the game, he played bishop to f2. Well, pawn takes f5 is what he should have played. Bishop g2 takes, come with the rook, take. And what's the count? Shirov here has 6 pawns, 1, 2, 3, and 3 on the other side. Polgar has 4, so he's up 2 pawns. And he's also up 2 pieces. He's up a bishop and a knight, and 2 pawns for the queen. So technically, Judit is only up 1 point in this position. And if Shirov just keeps these pawns together, it's still a game. I mean, if, for example, takes, knight bd4, at least he tries to coordinate his pieces. He's not quite obviously losing in any way yet. I mean, she's going to try to, come in with a knight and do damage. Very complicated position. But Shirov certainly didn't want to lose a queen here. And instead, he just backed up with the bishop to f2. Except now, there is another punch. The 5th punch of the combination, I think. Queen takes g5. And if you take, there is knight f3 check. Knight f3 check. King's only move, and this still cannot be taken, and if it's not taken, I will take you. So I'm going to win back all my material, and your entire king side is shattered, and your king can't castle and is stuck in the center of the board. Queen takes g5. Shirov doesn't take in this position, he goes knight a5. So this is actually a fascinating game of chess where there's battle on both sides of the board, and it just ties together very well. Knight a5 is a losing move because now knight to e3. The queen is hit. If the bishop takes, then what you play here is you just take. If here, knight f3 check. Gorgeous. Judit wins without moving 3 of her major pieces. Literally, right? I mean neither did Shirov, but only one side won. Knight f3, and you have to take. If king d1, it's just mate. So that didn't happen. Instead, Shirov played a kind of solid move. He tried to play queen g3. Judit took and then took. But here she had something so savage. I wanted to share it with all of you because it's just disgusting what computers do. Okay, take and king d1, right? And so the thing is, in this position, if you just go for the rook, let's not forget your queen is hanging. So you can throw in queen takes g3 and then take on a1, and that kind of becomes the game. But the engine here wants queen takes pawn, leaving two of your pieces hanging. Just hanging. The queen's not attacking anything. Defended. Here's why. Here's why. If king takes knight, we have check. Let's say the king goes back. I mean, coming out is a little bit too dangerous. You can just take on h1 here. And the engine recommends rook c8. Just disregarding, just going bishop c2. Knight comes in. If rook c1, right, just trying to trade the rooks. Take, knight comes in. And now bishop, this guy, queen, the next bishop is coming. Let's not also forget that the knight is hanging on the other side of the board. The rook is hanging. It's very bad news here for white. And well, if you take on b7, trying to get my bishop, then I take, and I continue with life. I'm going to bring my rook, I'm going to bring my bishop. Oh, sorry. I'm going to bring my bishop. And the game, Judit played the most straightforward thing. I mean, this is, you just take the queen and then go do all this. And, well, Shirov's left with taking the bishop and being down 2 points of material. Now, what's the easiest way to convert this game? Simplification. When you have an extra exchange like this, but a knight is stuck on the edge of the board, you want to get that knight back. You want to make a little rescue operation to get the knight. That's why she played b3. If take, right, which is what happened in the game. If you don't take, if you play like a3, well, now I can get my knight out. So take. Good move. King comes, we bring the knight back. We want to simplify. Shirov takes because, frankly, I mean, if he goes here, rook c8 is coming, and so he does this. And then he moves back. Now we get knight coming to f3 to hit the bishop. When the bishop comes here, we get knight d4. Very solid. And the only way to get rid of this knight is going to be to take it and trade. So Shirov doesn't want to do that. Now bishop d6. Either to take this knight or just to plant the bishop in the center. If the king is your most active piece, like in a position like this, it's probably bad news. Bishop g2, bishop e5, and now the rook is going to come. So king c4 and king e7. You can't take on c5 for a variety of reasons, but I think the most important one is that you just get checkmated. I think you get checkmated because your king is just locked here. I think this is just leading to mate, some sort of knight b5 or knight c2, but I mean, look, it's the king versus 4 pieces. Yeah, the bishop's gonna help you, but let's be serious. So Shirov played rook a1 here. I think, honestly, he just played this move out of spite. His rook hadn't gotten a chance to play in the sandbox with all the other pieces. Judit went back to c6, offering a trade of bishops, or potentially even bishop takes and rook takes h5. Can't quite play this, because, you know, you have a hanging rook in the corner, but just the idea to simplify with the bishop is there. And on this backwards knight move, Alexey decided that he had had enough, and he resigned the game. Unbelievable. Again, just everything from here was the work of genius. Honestly, I even want to say this whole thing with knight e7, realizing the differences in the systems, and not going for what's kind of the traditional knight on f6 and getting this, and finding that the difference is that the knight can fight for the dark squared complex with all, just uncorking a combination, fighting on both flanks, throwing in the pieces in there. Just beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. And at this point, Alexey was 2740, which back then was an insane ranking. I mean, again, one of the top players in the world. To summarize this video, I want to leave you all off on this. Have you seen a game or the controversy between Judit and Kasparov in 1994? That's a game that I definitely want to look at. And if you've made it this far in the video, let me know how you enjoyed this one. If you have a favorite other game that I might have missed. As always, maybe a player who I haven't featured yet in this series. And I think that's basically all for now. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.